Hello, and welcome to my presentation on the Bible calendar and Sabbaths. I understand that with the remnant, keeping the Sabbaths is a very important issue, and for good reason. And even though we're all reading the same Bible, it seems that no one can come to an agreement on this calendar issue. I've listened to many reasonings from all sorts of perspectives on how the calendar in the Bible works, and over these years never found one that was satisfying or fit in perfectly with my understanding of how a year works. Furthermore, many of the calendars our people try to keep either contradict themselves or contradict God's own Sabbath laws, and many Bible students, instead of reaching to the Bible for answers on how the calendar works, reach either to tradition or historical calendars, or look to the so-called and self-styled Jews for their calendar. But the Bible is here for our wisdom and our edifying, and these things should be very plain. God established the nature of our world at its creation, and none of his laws contradict. So we have to take the information on these calendar and Sabbath laws and make them all fit in a scheme that also fits with our natural order on our planet. Keep in mind that this is merely my take on these things with the information available, and your mileage may vary. I ask that you think critically on this issue, and as always, keep an open mind. It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but it is the honor of kings to search out a matter. Beginning with these all-important verses on this calendar topic, we have Exodus 34, starting in verse 23. Thrice in the year shall all your men-children appear before the Lord God, the God of Israel. For I will cast out the nations before thee, and enlarge thy borders, neither shall any man desire thy land, when thou shalt go up to appear before the Lord thy God thrice in the year. And speaking as an American, I must ask, is our land being desired? Yes, it is, and specially by our enemies, our land is flying away from us. Even the tenants of it can hardly be said to own it. They refuse to pay their tribute. And in Deuteronomy 16, 3 times in the year shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, and in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles. And they shall not appear before the Lord empty. It'd be a good thing if we could appear before the Lord with something to show for it, yet we don't even try to appear before the Lord. These feasts are crucial to our Bible understanding, as many important world-changing events happened on these dates in both Old Testament and New Testament times. The discerning Bible student always needs to be aware of the date on which things occur, if it is given in the Bible story. This video is a Bible study, and as such, I'll try not to talk too much about the variation in world calendars. And so this is only a very surface level analysis of these things, and much of this is given in summary. I'm trying more to focus on the Bible here, but nobody in our modern day is used to keeping 2 calendars, and it seems the entire world has adopted the Gregorian calendar. So it's very hard to understand alternatives for the Gregorian calendar without a context. The Romans and Greeks used an 8-day calendar as early as 200 BC until Theodosius was killed at Carthage in 378 AD. The 7-day week was not brought in until after Theodosius' reign, at least according to my Encyclopedia Britannica. The Julian calendar was introduced in 46 BC during the 8-day week, and our Gregorian calendar replaced it in 1582 when Pope Gregory XIII ordered 10 days to be removed from that year, as the previous calendar had drifted that far. This change was not universal, as Britain did not make the switch until 170 years later, and had to remove 11 days. Russia did not make the change until 1910, when 13 days were removed. And of course, before this information age and age of worldwide travel, every people group and nation probably had their own calendar, although they were likely borrowers and variations of a central calendar, and these calendars had different solutions to problems in fitting nice even days, weeks, and months into our tropical year. I think it was during the Humanist Revolution in France where they attempted to have a 10-day week. And that's not the only one of those. So if someone tells you for sure that Jesus was crucified on a Wednesday or on a Friday, I guarantee you they have no idea what day Jesus was crucified on. Similarly, most of the Sabbath bickering comes from 2 camps of Saturday keepers or Sunday keepers, and neither one realizes that the other party is both wrong and correct some of the time. God does not change, God's law does not change, yet our calendar does. Did you know that the Orthodox churches still use the Julian calendar for ecclesiastical purposes? The date of this recording is March 16, 2025, but by the Julian calendar, it is only March 3rd, 2025. Did you know that Easter can fall on one of 35 different days? Did you know that many of the world's calendars start Monday as the first day of the week? This, of course, is more practical for businesses, but much of Europe and other parts of the world, their calendar starts on Monday. And in fact, if your first day of the week on your calendar starts on Sunday, take time to consider how arbitrary that is. If you'd like to see a lot of pointless debating, take the more opinionated members of your church and ask them these questions. What day of the week was Jesus crucified on? What day of the week was Jesus resurrected on? And is Sunday or Saturday the Sabbath day? Opinions vary, and proponents of different answers have ingenious explanations for their particular opinion, and still some say, well, there's no way to tell, so why bother? I hope to give some more perfect solutions to these issues in this presentation. These are from a few catechisms from the Catholic Church. They're referenced to the bottom. They say, had she not much power, she could not have done that in which all modern religionists agree with her. She could not have substituted the observance of Sunday, the first day of the week, for the observance of Saturday, the seventh day, a change for which there is no scriptural authority. So you see, even the Church of Rome recognizes that they did this of their own whim and self-aggrandizes, saying that they were perfectly in their right to do it. We observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church in the Council of Laodicea transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. Like all the popular false doctrines in our churches and societies today, all roads, unfortunately, lead to Rome. So let's look at the beginning of what a Sabbath is. In Genesis chapter 2, finishing up the story of creation, thus the heavens and earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day, and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. Don't let this word Sabbath confuse you. It is simply a word meaning rest. In the Bible, it's not only applied to a day, but also to years and feasts. In fact, in all of the Sabbath laws in the Bible, you will never find the phrase of the week. Nowhere is a Sabbath or feast or holy convocation said to be on a day of the week. Occasionally you will find number references to days of the feast, but never of the week. Take time to review these chapters before we go on in this presentation. This is not all of the Sabbath laws in the Bible, but these are the main places, and if you'd like to learn about the three main feasts, these are the places to do it in. Also, keep in mind that Leviticus 10 describes all of the Day of Atonement, and Leviticus 25, the 50th year. Beginning with the Ten Commandments. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Holy means set apart for a particular purpose. In this case, rest. 6 days shalt thou labor, and do all thy work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Now a part of this Sabbath law is very rarely discussed, but look at the words, 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. That is a law. That is equal to authority to, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work. If you want to think of it this way, what this establishes is a 6-day mandatory working block and a 1-day mandatory rest. This is the first law we've seen, and it is quite easy to comprehend. Thou shalt work 6 days, thou shalt rest the seventh. Continuing with the 6 and 7 idea, in Exodus 23 verse 10, and 6 years thou shalt sow thy land, and shalt gather in the fruits thereof. But the seventh year thou shalt let it rest and lie still, that the poor of thy people may eat. And what they leave the beasts of the field shall eat. In like manner thou shalt deal with thy vineyard and with thy oliveyard. 6 days shalt thou do thy work, and on the seventh day thou shalt rest. that thine ox and thine ass may rest, and the son of thy handmaid, and the stranger may be refreshed. And in all things that I have said unto you be circumspect, and make no mention of the name of other gods, neither let it be heard out of thy mouth. Well, Moses was above 80 years old when he said this. Do you think he was getting senile? Is that last sentence a non sequitur? What does it have to do with the Sabbath laws? Make no mention of the name of other gods, neither let it be heard out of thy mouth. In the ordering of our days, do we make mention of the name of other gods? You probably know about the days of the week being named for the sun and the moon, and a variety of gods from the Norse pantheon. And then we have the Roman god Saturn for our seventh day, but it doesn't stop there. We have the god Janus, with two faces looking towards the past and the future for January, the god of war for March, the earth goddess Maya for May, and you may have in your imagination images of people dancing around a maypole with streamers or leaping over fires. In the Gaelic languages, this month is called Beltane, and Tine in Irish means fire, and we know who Baal is from the Bible. This month was named for the fires of Baal. And of course, June is named after Jupiter's wife. Carefully consider the language here of the Sabbath laws. In Leviticus 23, concerning the feasts of the Lord, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feasts. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest and holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. So two things equal to the same thing are equal to one another, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations. Even these are my feasts. So a holy convocation is a feast. The seventh day is the Sabbath of rest and holy convocation. So the feast days fell on rest days. The Sabbaths are holy convocations, and the feasts are holy convocations. They are the same thing. To convocate merely means to come together. We might be more familiar with the word congregate. We have a number of calendrical conventions. For example, in our Gregorian calendar, you may notice that your birthday or certain holidays fall on different days of the week in different months of the year. If you were to compare a fixed day, such as your birthday or Christmas, with the natural year itself, you would also see that the sun and stars are out of position year by year. Our months alternate between 31 and 30 days, except when they don't, like July and August, or poor February only has 28 days, except when it doesn't, once every 4 years. But God's calendar is unchanging. It is the same calendar year by year, every year, and all of the days and Sabbaths always fall on the same days of the month, directly in line with the things in the heavens. If you'll take time to read the verses displayed here, you'll see that there is a tradition of cleansing the temple or holy space on the first day of the year. Sometimes it's the camp, or the tabernacle, or the temple, and somehow, between the days of Moses and the days of Ezra, 1,335 years later, the calendar was identical to the year that it was instituted. We have this most perfect calendar throughout the Bible that never changes and never needs any updates or moving about of the days, where all months are even and all Sabbath laws are obeyed, and yet man thinks he has a better idea than God. For example, 2025 started on a Wednesday, 2024 a Monday, and 2023 a Sunday. But every year of God's calendar begins on the same day. So let's take a look at these three major feasts of the year, and we can further compare the two. Leviticus 23 I will be referring back to a lot in this lesson, so please keep your Bible open to Leviticus 23. These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. In the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover, and on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. In the first day ye shall have an holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein, but ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord 7 days. In the 7th day is an holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein. That last phrase, in the 7th day, is speaking both of the week and of the feast in this instance. So counting backwards, knowing that we have one rest day for every 6 work days, we see that the new year of the Bible calendar always begins on a Sabbath. The way the calendar accomplishes this is very clever. I don't mean to say that Passover is more important than the Feast of Weeks or the Feast of Booths, but Passover is the only feast here where we are given a make-up time if you're not able to celebrate it in the first month on the 14th day. You can read in Numbers 9 to see about that. Something of note happens 49 days after this celebration. Pay attention to what's being said. And ye shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering. 7 Sabbaths shall be complete, even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath shall ye number 50 days. And ye shall offer a new meat offering unto the Lord. And ye shall proclaim on the selfsame day that it may be an holy convocation unto you. Ye shall do no servile work therein. It shall be a statute forever in all your dwellings throughout your generations. So, what has happened here? The 49th day after the wave sheaf is a Sabbath, obviously. So, how is the 50th day also a Sabbath? Wouldn't that be 2 Sabbaths, 2 days in a row? The word Pentecost that I have used at the top here means 50th in Greek, and it is speaking to the 50th day after that wave sheaf. That would be the 65th day of the year. Keep in mind that 49 is a number signifying mercy in the Bible. God was patient with the remnant of Judah a total of 490 years before Nebuchadnezzar carried the nation into Babylon. When Peter asked Jesus how many times we are to forgive our brethren, the Lord's reply is 70 times 7. That is 490. So what's happened here? Has God broken his own Sabbath law? Not only in days do we find this variation, but also the 50th year. Leviticus 25, and thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years unto thee, 7 times 7 years, and the space of 7 Sabbaths of years shall be unto you 49 years. Then shalt thou cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. In the day of atonement shall ye make the trumpet sound throughout all your land, and ye shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. A jubilee shall that 50th year be unto you. Ye shall not sow, neither reap that which groweth of itself in it, nor gather the grapes in it of thy vine undressed, for it is the jubilee. It shall be holy unto you, ye shall eat the increase thereof out of the field. So not only was the 49th day a Sabbath and the 50th day a Sabbath, but also the 49th year and the 50th year were both Sabbaths. This is another rule of our Sabbath laws. And notice the transition in those verses between year 49 and the Jubilee. I quote, "The space of 7 Sabbaths of years shall be unto thee 49 years, then shalt thou cause the trumpet of Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month." The way the verse is worded, it seems like that 50th year begins in the 49th year on the Day of Atonement. No doubt this is the same thing happening on Pentecost. To us, in mankind's time reckoning, the Feast of Weeks and Pentecost would be 2 natural days of 48 hours. But our God counts those 2 natural days as 1. It is 1 Sabbath time in God's eyes. There are 6 working days before the 49th day, and there are 6 working days after the 50th day. These 2 natural days being 1 in God's eyes allows the Sabbaths to fit in the year. If we divide 364 by 7, we get 52. The dark half and the light half of the year in God's calendar are exact mirrors of each other, and they each contain 182 days each. That's kind of handy because that means each of our 4 seasons get 91 days each. But how does this work with our Earth's day-to-day and year-to-year cycles? Let's go back to the beginning and we'll find out. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Now this is Genesis 1 verse 16 from the King James Bible. But if you take your concordance and look into the Hebrew words that make this verse up, you'll find some interesting things. Firstly, that word also does not exist in the Hebrew, and the words he made are not there. So I've put it in bare bones Hebrew, and I sound a bit like a Flintstone. God made 2 large lights. Big light rule daytime, Small light rule nighttime, the stars. Sure enough, that word gadol could mean major as in great in number. And the word there to signify the stars also is the Hebrew word eth, which is a direct accusative. In no way could that be translated also. Strong says it is a direct object marker. And I'll have you think about this. If the lesser light to rule the night is the moonlight, it must be a ruler in absentia. The moon does not always rule the night. On a new moon, the sun and moon are in the same part of the sky at the same time. That's how we get those solar eclipses ever so often. So on nights of a new moon, the moon is on the other side of the earth. It can hardly be ruling the night if it doesn't even appear in that night. No, this lesser light to rule the night is speaking of starlight. And in speaking of man's calendar, such as the Romans, they only had a 314-day year for a long time. That's why our months September, October, November, and December should be months 7, 8, 9, 10, but they are months 9, 10, 11, 12. During the winter time, when war was made inconvenient by weather, the Romans simply did not count what we now take for January and February. Their year began again at the spring equinox. You'll see from this that an accurate calendar cannot be described by motions of the moon. God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, and for years." So our assigning of these signs, seasons, days, and years do not work with God's Sabbath laws. Now the moon is a time teller, and it is for a sign in the sky, but not for our calendar. The moon is very important, and I'm not trying to throw it under the bus here. I'm just saying it can't be considered for our Sabbath and calendar laws in the Bible. A synodic month of the moon is 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, and 2.9 seconds. That's a very fine measure. But a sidereal month is only 27 days, 7 hours, 43 minutes, and 11 and 1/2 seconds. That is the difference between a moon appearing at exactly the same phase or at exactly the same spot in our sky. Furthermore, the lunar calendar setup has to have an intercalated month ever so many years in order to make their new moons fit with their new years. But this is not done in the Bible. There are 12 months according to the calendar laws. However, numbers related to our sun and our zodiac fit right in with these Bible Sabbath laws. If you carefully read Noah's story, you'll find out that his years only had 360 days. What's more than that, his months only had 30 days apiece. The 1,260 days in Daniel and Revelation is given as 42 months exactly. Now that has to be a 30-day month for that to work. So each prophetic time nicely agrees with our year being 360 days. Something after Noah's cataclysm added these extra days. Our tropical year is 365.24219 days long, and you can continue that decimal, but I've chosen to round it off there. That's why our Gregorian calendar, every 4 years, we have to add a day, because of this accumulation of a quarter day. So, like many of the ancient societies, we must ask, what do we do with the extra 5 days? And what do we do with that extra near quarter day? There must be a solution to this, as the Bible's Sabbath laws cannot contradict one another. We've seen how the first half of the year stacks up, but if you take the first 6 months to be 30 days apiece, we'll have a problem beginning the second half of the year. Let's press on. We have to ask why this matters so much that these laws all agree with one another and with the natural movement of our planet. We read in Exodus 31, "Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, Verily, my Sabbaths shall ye keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am the Lord that doth sanctify you. You shall keep the Sabbath therefore, for it is holy unto you. Every one that defileth it shall surely be put to death, for whosoever doeth any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. 6 days may work be done, but in the 7th is the Sabbath of rest, holy to the Lord. Whosoever doeth any work in the Sabbath day, he shall surely be put to death. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations, for a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days The Lord made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. To our God, this is a life and death issue, and you can read in Jeremiah that we know the covenants to Abraham, Isaac, and Israel are still in operation because of our sun and moon cycles. That covenant with our people is as fixed as these signs in the heavens. Did this matter to Jesus? And when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all with one accord in one place. And suddenly there came a sound from heaven as of a rushing mighty wind, and it filled all the house where they were sitting. And there appeared unto them cloven tongues, like as of fire, and it sat upon each of them. And they were all filled with the Holy Ghost, and began to speak with other tongues, as the Spirit gave them utterance. Yes, the giving of the Holy Ghost and the revival of Israel began on a Pentecost. Did it matter to the apostles? Acts 20. For Paul had determined to sail by Ephesus, because he would not spend the time in Asia, for if he hasted, if it were possible for him to be at Jerusalem the day of Pentecost. Or in his own words, but I will tarry at Ephesus until Pentecost. So even after the expiry of Daniel's 70th week, and after the giving of the Holy Spirit, and 27 years after Jesus' resurrection and ascension, his disciples were still observing his calendar. With what we've learned so far, let's move into the second half of the year, and we'll see that it is planned out exactly like the first half of the year. Much like our planet in its transit around the sun, this is a wheel, and it is perfectly balanced all the way around. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, in the first day of the month, ye shall have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, and holy convocation. So just like the first day of the first month, the first day of the 7th month is a Sabbath. Now, if you try and plan this out for yourself, and you go 6 30-day months from the New Year day, you'll find that you only get to day 5 of the week before the Day of Trumpets. Or perhaps day 6 if you forget about the 49 and 50th day rule. We'll explain this at the end of the study. Also, on the 10th day of this 7th month, there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be an holy convocation unto you, and ye shall afflict your souls, and offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. And ye shall do no work in that same day, for it is a day of atonement, to make an atonement for you before the Lord your God. It shall be unto you a Sabbath of rest, and ye shall afflict your souls. In the 9th day of the month at even, from even to even, shall ye celebrate your Sabbath. So this Day of Atonement is very special for a number of reasons, but here we see that it aligns with the 10th day of the first month, as on that day the children of Israel were to choose a lamb for the Passover 4 days later. On the 10th day of this Day of Atonement, they were to choose 2 goats, one for an atoning covering, and one for a scapegoat. The 15th day of this 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days unto the Lord. Also, in the 15th day of the 7th month, when ye have gathered in the fruit of the land, ye shall keep a feast unto the Lord 7 days. Ye shall dwell in booths 7 days, that your generations may know that I have made the children of Israel to dwell in booths, when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. So, like the feast of unleavened bread, the 15th day of the 1st and 7th month start week-long feasts. One is a celebration of the first thing you get out of the ground, and the other a celebration of the final thing you get out of the ground. Whereas we are moving and escaping during Passover, we are settling down and getting comfortable in the Feast of Booths. We've seen that the Lord called this Sabbath law a perpetual covenant, and indeed in Ezekiel 45, in the building of his city, we find these same feast laws. I highly recommend that you consult my Bible geometry presentations, where we'll see more of this same system of numbering that we find in the year. In those presentations, I tried my best to explain that Ezekiel's city is a diagram of our solar system, so we shouldn't be shocked that the feasts and layout of our months conform to these same geometric principles. Our cosmos is built with this calendar in mind, and it ensures that the Sabbath cycle stays intact every year, every month, every week, for all time, without altering the cycle. This calendar is self-correcting, and we don't have to try and carefully work backwards from our current date to find out when things in the Bible occur, because every year is exactly the same. So no more of those debates as to when Jesus died, or when Jesus was resurrected, or whether Saturday or Sunday is the Sabbath day. God does not change. God's law is immutable, and God's calendar is perfect for our life on earth. Considering this 49th and 50th rule, we now have an answer to one of the questions we asked at the beginning. Is the Sabbath day on a Saturday or on a Sunday? If you compare this calendar with our Gregorian calendar, you will notice that every Pentecost, the Sabbath day forwards one day on the Gregorian calendar. So far, in 2025, the Sabbath day has been on a Wednesday, but after this Pentecost coming up in May, the Sabbath day will then be on a Thursday. When comparing the Bible's calendar to the Gregorian calendar, this happens every year at Pentecost. So in the cycle of 7 years, Saturday will be the Sabbath day for 1 year, and Sunday will be the Sabbath day for 1 year. So the Saturday keepers are right 1 year out of 7, and the Sunday keepers are right 1 year out of 7, and both camps are totally incorrect for 6 years out of 7. There are many denominations or church groups in our world today that claim to be Sabbath keepers. How they explain this in the light of the Bible's Sabbath laws, I do not know. Now, unfortunately, I have not gotten around to making a chart of this year, but I will discuss how it works here. If you need a further explanation of this thing, or have questions as to how it works, please contact me and I will do my best to satisfy your curiosity. It's clear that the Bible calendar is still working on that 360-day in a year principle, but our tropical year has a bit more than 365 days. So where do we put those 5 days more? I think that they're taken much like the superstition of ancient Sumer and Egypt as days of nothing. In these heathen traditions, they were days where no business was conducted or recorded, and they were seen as unlucky days, days that did not naturally fit into the 360-day calendar. Many of these ancient societies ran two calendars side by side, a civil calendar and a sacred calendar, which was 360 days. Now, where the Babylonians and Egyptians tried to affix those 5 spare days to the end of their calendar, the Bible does things a bit differently to keep everything in order. At the end of the 6th month, you can think of it one of two ways, that the 6th and 12th months have 32 days apiece. Now, I think of it that every month has 30 days apiece, and that there just happen to be those 2 extra days of nothing on the end of the 6th and 12th months. Given where they are, we don't count them among the days of the month, because that would mean 2 of our months do not agree to the 30 days a month given in the Bible. But they are necessary to keep the Sabbath cycle intact. If you count from the first day of the first month to the first day of the 7th month, which must be a Sabbath, you'll find that you have 183 days between the spring and autumn equinoxes. But 183 is not correct, as the 49th and 50th day after the wave sheaf are taken as one day. So that's both halves of the year each have 182 days. That falls into 7 quite nicely. There are 26 Sabbaths between the first day of the first month and the first day of the 7th month. And that means when you get to the final days of the 12th month, you add those 2 phantom or non-existent days to the month to give the Sabbath its proper occurrence on the first day of the first month every year for all time. This is a brilliant and ingenious way to calculate our year and keep it in flow with our solar system. Of course, the next question that comes up is, well, what about the 0.24219 days on the end of that? And as for this, I see 2 solutions, one of which I favor and one of which I say kind of works. The one thing you could do is keep with this leap year every 4 years like we have on the Gregorian calendar. So every 4 years you could count the 49th day and Pentecost as an actual day and simply have 183 days in the first half of the year and 183 days in the second half of the year. I don't think that's the way to do it. I think every year has to be the same on the Bible's calendar. So I say, just like those 5 spurious days of nothing, we just forget about that extra time. Those days don't need to be counted in our perfect 360-day idealized year number. So why not just say, on the first day of the first month, that is New Year's, that is, the vernal equinox, whatever is left over from the previous year, we can just cut off and self-correct it. In other words, no matter what happens in terms of actual time in the year, we have to come to a reset every vernal equinox. I know that this Bible calendar can be hard to wrap your mind around with words and type, and I wish I had a graphic or a calendar to display for you. I hope you found my words edifying and you were able to learn from, or at least think about, what the Bible means in terms of the Sabbath and calendars. All of the words surrounding the calendar and Sabbath laws are true. All of the laws have to fit, and we can't change the motion of the sun and the earth. And this is the only solution that I have found thus far, and I can't believe that nobody else is talking about this. A very careful reading of the Sabbath laws in the Bible provides this calendar, but I don't know where else to find this. If you do, or have a more clear way of explaining it, or breaking it down, please let me know. This is only my first venture into this thing, and I would like to have it in a form that is more easily grasped by Bible study newcomers. Thank you for watching, and I wish you all the best in your study of your Bible and these things. Like the issues with our year and months, tradition and superstition get in the way of our people understanding this thing as well, so I've chosen to append it to my presentation in order to clarify. The Bible itself and plain logic describes the beginning of a day well enough, but we ought to at least know where those things are described. In fact, we've already read over them. Did you catch it? If it is your understanding that a day begins at sunset, or ends at sunset, whichever way you want to take it, you ought to ask yourself where you learned this, or found it put forward as doctrine so emphatically. Does this even make sense? Well, when it's noon, we say it is midday. And if that is the middle, then whatever the opposite of it is must be the beginning and end. If you'll carefully reread the verses on Passover and the Day of Atonement, we can find the answer in the Bible as to when does a day begin. And they departed from Ramses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month, on the morrow after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with an high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians. Now notice, the Exodus occurred on the 15th day, and we read in our Passover laws that it occurred on the 14th day. So, are the Passover and Exodus on the same day? If we read in Exodus 12, speaking about that chosen lamb, and ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. Okay, we know that the Passover feast took place at night because it was after sunset that those lambs were roasted, and also that Israel left Egypt by night, but they did so on the 15th day. And as God tells Moses, "Thus saith the Lord, about midnight will I go out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die." You see, the Passover and the Exodus occurred on the same night, but that is a night that is shared by the 14th and 15th calendar days. And it came to pass that at midnight the Lord smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said, "Rise up, and get you forth from among my people, both ye and the children of Israel, and go, serve the Lord as ye have said." Rise up and get you forth. That is the Exodus occurring after midnight. And as we read about the Day of Atonement, read this carefully, verse 27 and 32 back to back, and you'll see it. "Also, on the 10th day of this 7th month there shall be a Day of Atonement. It shall be unto you a Sabbath of rest, and ye shall afflict your souls in the 9th day of the month at even. From even to even shall ye celebrate your Sabbath." So the 9th day of the month is still in occurrence at even, but the Day of Atonement was meant for the 10th day of the 7th month. That means the calendar must tick over from the 9th to the 10th day sometime after sunset. Of course, we have all heard the wonderful sermons about God rescuing his bride from Egyptian captivity to marry her at Sinai. And in the parable of the 10 virgins, and at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. This is Jesus Christ hearkening back to that Exodus, and he knew full well that at midnight there was a cry made, and Israel left her captivity. Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him.